Hi everyone, thank you for having me here today. My name is Jodie Hession and I'm a recent Sustainability Masters graduate student associated with Anglia Ruskin University in partnership with the Eden Project. I live in Boscastle, so not too far from here, and I do spend a lot of time in Bude as well. My dissertation focused on Bude as a case study, looking into climate emotions, place attachment and psychological adaptation to climate change, with a particular focus on predicted sea level rise. I decided to choose this topic after seeing the predicted effects of sea level rise and annual flood levels in Bude in 2050 displayed on this map here by Climate Central. I also came across a list of project ideas suggested by Bude Climate Partnership, and one around climate anxiety stood out to me. After attending the Climate Cafe facilitator training hosted by the Climate Psychology Alliance, this displayed to me the importance of acknowledging and processing the wide range of emotions experienced in relation to climate change, not only to open the dialogue around a sometimes divisive and abstract topic, but also as a means for supporting psychological adaptation to climate change. While much attention has been given to the physical and environmental impacts of climate change and adaptation, less frequently discussed are the psychological and emotional effects on individuals and communities and the subsequent adaptation. Importantly, individual and collective psychological adaptation can enhance physical adaptation strategies. My study consisted of 7 interviews with participants aged between 24 to 70 years old who either lived and or worked in Bude, and also an online questionnaire which received 52 responses in total. The findings demonstrated a complex emotional landscape regarding climate change in Bude, with prevailing emotions of sadness linked to discussions of coastal erosion and landscape changes. Worry and concern were rooted in the present and predicted impacts of climate change and sea level rise. However, participants felt an urgent need to act, driven by hope and visible local climate action. A barrier to this was identified in strong feelings of powerlessness, particularly towards the predicted sea level rise and flooding. All participants reported being attached to Bude as a place. A resistance to changes in the landscape was observed as participants expressed a desire for the environment in Bude to remain unchanged. This resistance could act as a psychological barrier to adapting to climate change, as the conflict between attachment to Bude and the prospect of landscape transformation can create emotional distress and cognitive dissonance. This is particularly important consideration for engagement and decision-making around physical adaptation strategies. Social attachment to Bude as a place offers a promising approach to psychological adaptation if the community are engaged in activities which are effective at bolstering self and collective efficacy. In other words, activities which help people to believe in their ability to make a difference. Participants pertain to the gradual progression of climate change locally as resulting in limited awareness among other community members. Some individuals may not notice or think about such incremental changes, something that researchers sometimes refer to as boiling frog syndrome. Alternatively, people can become used to environmental losses, referred to in ecology as shifting baseline syndrome. However, it is also possible that individuals might be avoiding the issues as a coping mechanism, and this could be misinterpreted as limited awareness. The feelings of powerlessness may be linked to this avoidance due to limited self-efficacy and perceived ability to make changes. This was evident in the discussions I had with participants. My study produced recommendations for future research, which I'm happy to share via email. I think it's more important today to focus on recommendations for local policy and community engagement. To facilitate psychological adaptation, the community needs to address feelings of powerlessness and harness emotions to drive constructive actions through initiatives such as climate cafes. If the feelings of sadness and worry can be successfully buffered by hope, this could fuel adaptive behaviour. Utilising emotional narratives and impactful visualisations in public communication campaigns could bridge the emotional gap between gradual environmental changes and urgent action. The visualisations developed by the Bude Climate Partnership and the Environment Agency are a great example of this. Establishing community activities that allow individuals to openly express and discuss their climate-related emotions could foster emotional resilience. psychological adaptation, and encourage collective action. Climate cafes, for example, can provide a platform for sharing coping strategies and enhancing social support networks. Finally, policy interventions and climate action initiatives should acknowledge the emotional dimension of climate change by incorporating emotional experiences into planning and decision-making to facilitate more holistic and effective strategies. Community-based initiatives that leverage local strengths and resources whilst aligning with the emotional landscape of the community and remaining sensitive to people's attachment to Bude as a place could work to enhance adaptive capacity. Engaging community members in co-creating adaptation strategies could foster ownership and empowerment, bolstering collective efficacy and reducing feelings of powerlessness. And everyone gathered here today is helping to make this a possibility. Thank you for listening. Thank you.